स्टार्ट हो गई और हमसे पूछा भी नहीं गया कि कौन सी स्ट्रीमिंग चलानी है। मे बी इसने सेलेक्ट कर लिया हो खुद से, आई होप, वरना थोड़ा वापस से स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा। ठीक है कूल है। ओके, मैं इस तरफ क्यों देख रहा था, क्योंकि यहाँ मेरा दूसरा स्क्रीन आ गई है अब। थोड़ा मज़ा आ रहा है ज़िंदगी में। खैर, मेरा नाम है अक्षय। जो लोग मुझे नहीं जानते हैं वो अच्छी बात है, अब जान जाओ। स्प्रिंग बूट पे हम लोग आ चुके हैं। हमने जावा स्टार्टिंग से शुरू किया था, आज हमारा डे 20 है। और हमने बेसिक जावा से सीखते हुए ऊप्स कॉन्सेप्ट, फिर उसके बाद अपना एक्सेप्शन हैंडलिंग, कलेक्शन फ्रेमवर्क, देन मल्टी थ्रेडिंग, और ये सब करते हुए हम लोग फाइनली स्प्रिंग बूट पे आ गए हैं। हमारा मेन एम है कि हम प्रोजेक्ट्स बिल्ड करें स्टैंड अलोन, खुद से, पूरे दम के साथ, अकेले। तो अकेले का पता नहीं, क्योंकि फ्रंट एंड बैक एंड दोनों रहता है, तो वो वेरी करेगा टाइम टू टाइम। बट उसके अलावा वी आर सॉर्टेड। तो एक बार स्प्रिंग बूट हम सीख लें तो आई रियली होप कि हम अपने जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, या जो भी मेरे दिमाग में आएगा प्रोजेक्ट, या जो भी मैं डिस्कस करूँगा किसी से प्रोजेक्ट, वो हम हाथों हाथ बिल्ड करें। दैट इज़ द रियल फन ना। तो उसमें मज़ा है। साथ में हम लोग जो जर्नी पे जा रहे हैं वो है नॉट अ डेवलपर बट अ आर्किटेक्ट, बट एन आर्किटेक्ट। तो हम एक आर्किटेक्ट बनना चाहते हैं, बहुत भयंकर लेवल वाले। कोशिश है, देखते हैं कितना पूरा होता है, बट आई होप, आई रियली थिंक कि हो जाएगा। तो अभी हम लोग स्प्रिंग बूट सीख रहे हैं। और कल हमने स्प्रिंग बूट इनिशियलाइज़र देखा था, और उसके बाद हमने स्प्रिंग बूट की एप्लीकेशन डाउनलोड करके एक बेसिक सा प्रोजेक्ट बनाया था। तो ये रही हमारी स्क्रीन। हमने ये प्रोजेक्ट बनाया था, हमारी डेमो एप्लीकेशन ये है। अगर हम इसको रन करते हैं तो यहाँ पे ये हमारा स्प्रिंग रन हो जाएगा। और हमने इसके अंदर एक डेव क्लास बनाया था कल। डेव क्लास के अंदर सिंपली एक बिल्ड मेथड है, तो वो बिल्ड मेथड यहाँ पे रन हो गया। आई एम अ डेवलपर, आई बिल्ड थिंग्स, ये यहाँ प्रिंट हो गया। तो इसका मतलब हमारा सेटअप वाइज सब कुछ कूल है। अब हम आगे देखेंगे। तो ये बेसिकली डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन हमने कल देखा था, कि हमें बनाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है डेव का एक न्यू करके ऑब्जेक्ट, क्योंकि जब हम न्यू करके बनाएंगे तो वो हमें हैंडल करना पड़ेगा। यहाँ पे जब हम स्प्रिंग बूट में काम कर रहे हैं तो हम ट्राई करेंगे कि स्प्रिंग बूट के कंपोनेंट्स का यूज़ करके करें। तो अगर हम इस तरह से बनाते हैं, गेट बीन करके डेव को इनिशियलाइज करते हैं बेसिकली, तो इस पॉइंट पे स्प्रिंग बूट की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि वो हमारे डेव को मैनेज करेगा। डेव को मैनेज करेगा इन द सेंस कि वो इसका ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएशन और डिलीशन सब कुछ वो मैनेज करेगा। तो ये हो गया एक पार्ट। नेक्स्ट, हम जिस वीडियो से पढ़ रहे हैं वो है तेलेस्कू की ये वीडियो, स्प्रिंग फ्रेमवर्क एंड स्प्रिंग बूट ट्यूटोरियल विद प्रोजेक्ट। तो ये हम पढ़ रहे हैं ऑलरेडी। सबसे मस्त बात बताऊं तुमको क्या हुआ है अभी आज, थोड़ा शेयर करते हैं तुम्हारे साथ, है ना। रुको। तो आज हमारे जो चैनल है उसकी जो कल वाली लाइव है, लाइव 19, ओके, ओ रुको 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 रुको, उसमें कमेंट आया है तेलुस्कू का। लर्निंग फ्रॉम योर, कीप लर्निंग कीप ग्रोइंग। अक्षय बोल दिया भाई तेलुस्कू ने, कितनी बड़ी बात हो गई है यार ये। जो लोग तेलुस्कू को जानते हैं वही जानते हैं कि कितनी बड़ी बात है ये। तो वो सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। और इनिशियली मैं घबरा रहा था कि अगर जैसे हम लोग लाइव पे किसी और के कंटेंट से पढ़ रहे हैं तो हो सकता है कि वो बोले कि हमसे मत पढ़ो हमसे मत पढ़ो, और बोले कि वीडियो हटाओ ये वाली, और वो सब भसड़ मचेगी। बट आई एम रियली लविंग द काइंड ऑफ सपोर्ट आई एम गेटिंग फ्रॉम तेलुस्कू, एंड आई होप कि ऐसे ही चलता रहे मस्त। तो इससे एज अ कम्युनिटी भी हम ग्रो करेंगे। और अब जब मैं वीडियोस बनाऊंगा, अभी तो मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ, बट जब मैं वीडियोस बनाऊंगा टॉपिक्स की, आगे कोई और जब यूज़ करेगा तो मैं भी उसको बोलूँगा कि करो आराम से भाई, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। क्योंकि एट द एंड जो हम पढ़ा रहे हैं, जो सब्जेक्ट हमारा है जावा, या जो भी सब्जेक्ट हम पढ़ा रहे हैं, वो एट द एंड सही हाथों में जाना चाहिए। मुझे ऐसा फील हुआ ये सब देख के। तो आई एम रियली ग्रेटफुल अबाउट दिस, और एक अच्छी लर्निंग मिली है मुझे इससे। तो मस्त भाई। अब एक ही दिल है, तिल इसको 4-5 बार जीत चुके हैं, तो देखते हैं और कितनी बार जीतेंगे। बट रियली आई एम ग्रेटफुल टू हिम। तो ठीक है, आप लोगों की जो भी क्वेरीज हों वो आप कमेंट कर सकते हो। तो मैं, हाय, एक मैसेज प्रिंट कर देता हूँ। क्वेरीज, in the command. Cool. इसके बाद हम अब आज की पढ़ाई शुरू करते हैं, तो ये ऑटो वायरिंग हम आज शुरू करेंगे. Cool.
So now we know how exactly your Spring Boot helps you with the dependency injection. But now let's
डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन एक एप्लीकेशन है या एक तरीका है आईओसी को इम्प्लीमेंट करने का स्प्रिंग बूट एप्लीकेशन में. आईओसी का मतलब इन्वर्जन ऑफ कंट्रोल. पहले या नॉर्मल प्रोजेक्ट्स में डेवलपर के पास पूरा कंट्रोल होता है कि वो किस तरह से अपने ऑब्जेक्ट्स के साथ खेलेगा या किस तरह से वो उसको क्रिएट करेगा, वो उसको डिस्ट्रॉय करेगा. ये सब रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी डेवलपर की होती है. इन्वर्जन ऑफ कंट्रोल का मतलब कि क्या ये डेव हमने क्रिएट किया, हमने नहीं क्रिएट किया, हमने कॉन्टेक्स्ट का गेट बीन्स यूज़ किया है ना. तो ये स्प्रिंग बूट ने क्रिएट किया काइंड ऑफ, और स्प्रिंग बूट मैनेज करेगा. तो इन्वर्जन ऑफ कंट्रोल मतलब कि हमने अपना एक अपनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी स्प्रिंग बूट ने बोला कि तुम रहने दो भाई, मैं संभाल लूँगा तुम्हारे जितने भी ऑब्जेक्ट्स होंगे, तो इस तरह से तुम बनाओ. इसको बनाने के लिए हमें बस एक चीज़ का ध्यान रखना पड़ा कि जो भी बीन है वहाँ पे हमें एनोटेशन लगाना है कंपोनेंट का. तो ये इतनी बात हमारी कल हो गई थी, तो अब आगे बढ़ते हैं.
add one more layer. So there's a concept called auto wiring. And in this video, let's try to focus on auto wiring with the help of one more layer. Target for this video is 250 commits. Now, which layer I'm talking about? Now, just for example, let's say when I talk about developers, of course, as a developer, I need a machine to work with. It can be a laptop, desktop, doesn't matter. I just want a machine to work with. So what I can do is I can work on the awesome project, but while doing that, maybe I also want to compile the code. So maybe I want to call a method called compile. Maybe I want to call the method debug. So we got all these methods to work with. And of course, I can't do this in my mind. We do that when you want to do a dry compilation, but technically, if you want to really build a project, you need to have a machine where you can compile and debug. So in order to call these methods, I need a class where I can define this. And that class is your laptop class. So let me create a class here, and time in I will just close this and let's create a new class. So here I will create a class called a laptop. Okay, and then in this laptop class, basically I'll be having method like public void compile. Of course, you need a compiler in your machine to compile something. But let's say if I have a method called compile, and it will say compiling with 404 bugs. But now, okay, this can be a simple joke, right? Where I say 404 bugs, where it's not found, bugs not found. Maybe I tried, maybe I failed. Anyway, the point is, I'm trying to print compiling with 404 bugs, and this is what I want to print. And now, since I have a laptop class, since I have a method now, I can, okay, it still shows you an error. Okay, it's there, he's here. So basically, if I want to call this compile, of course, I need...
एक सेकेंड, मस्त हम भी इस तरह दिखाएगा ये एरर. हमारे में तो रेड लाइन कर देगा शायद, है ना, अगर हम यहाँ पे या डेव में बनाए ना. डेव में हम डायरेक्टली यहाँ पे अगर कंपाइल लिख देते हैं, भाई दूसरी फाइल में दिखा दिया कि एरर है यहाँ पे. कंपाइल इज अनडिफाइंड, ठीक है, ये होना चाहिए. अब हम भी एक बना देते हैं लैपटॉप. लैपटॉप डॉट जावा. आई थिंक हमने एक पैकेज मिस कर दिया. डेमो ऐप के अंदर बनाओ ये सब. लैपटॉप में हमने एक पब्लिक मेथड बना दिया void कंपाइल. ठीक है, कंपाइल, और यहाँ पे आ गया एस आउट. 404 तो होती नहीं है, 500 एरर. ये कंपाइल टाइम हो सकती है, सर्वर पे एरर आई है भाई, 500 एरर. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे हमको नहीं दिखाया है ना, हमको यहीं पे दिखाएगा. ठीक है. इसका मतलब इंटेलिजे का एक और फायदा दिख गया हमें. ओके,
the object of laptop here. So I can simply say laptop. I got the reference, not the object. And using that reference, I can call this. I can say laptop.compile. Let's say we don't have debug, just to keep it simple. Let's go with single method. Of course, you can have multiple methods. So I got the laptop reference and I can call it now. There is no compile time issue Okay, you can see there is no problem here. But by default, when you talk about the instance variables, so laptop is a variable which is an instance variable. By default, it will get a value which is null. And we don't want it, right? We'll get the same problem which we got earlier. I want
Null
to show you
pointer
that. I want to show you the error which we got earlier. So I will just run this and you will get, waiting for the error.
beans.
Okay, so you can see we got null pointer exception. It's because the laptop is by default null. Let me just put this side by side. So how do we connect this? So one way is you can create the object here. So you can say new laptop, right? And then this will solve the problem, is because now you don't have a null there. You got the real object. So if I run this,
run Windows, Linux, and more on your Mac with unmatched performance.
it says working on this awesome project. Also, it says compiling with 404 bugs. So our problem is solved. Basically, it's able to call the laptop. But then this is not what I want. I don't want to say new laptop. And even if you want to say new laptop, there are multiple places you can do that. We don't actually create the object when you define the instance. You basically do that in the constructor of this class of developer or in the setter. Of course, this is a variable, right? So this should be private, where you can create a setter method for this, and you can do that in the setter if you want to use the new laptop. But anyway, I don't want to use new laptop anywhere. What I want is I want Spring to create this object and then automatically connect it here. So the first thing is what I will do is, so I will talk to Spring Framework by saying, hey Spring Framework, I know you are creating the object for dev. I want you to create object for the laptop as well. But it's not doing that. You know why? Because we forgot to do one thing, which is add component. Now, when you add component here, now your Spring Framework knows, or your Spring Boot knows, hey, dev is not the only class where I have to create the object, it's also the laptop. So now Spring Boot will create both the objects. And that's not a big deal. The big deal is, how will you connect these two? Now the developer says, I want laptop. How will you connect this? See, one way you can do is you can use the application context. Remember, in the main, basically we had this application context. And if you can get this in the developer or dev class, you can do that. But I don't want to invoke application context there. I don't want to use that there. So what you can do is you can use certain annotations. One of the annotations we can use here, or you can use one annotation which is called auto-wired. Now what this does is it says, see, as a developer or as a programmer here, in this case, not the programmer or in the example, but someone like me, I'm doing a code now. I want to connect this two, right? So basically when you say connect, that basically means wiring. Now, since I want this wiring to be done automatically, I can call this as auto wiring. And that's what the annotation is. When you say auto wired, now your Spring Boot says, okay, I want to get object of dev, but dev is dependent on the laptop. Let me connect this two. So behind the scene, it will connect it. And now you actually got the instance for the laptop. So using this, it will get the object, but using AutoWire, it will connect it. And how do we check it? Of course, to
check it, हम भी देखते हैं एक मिनट. Dev पे component है, component तो हमें बनाना ही पड़ेगा. ये हमने बना दिया component. Okay, थोड़ा space दे देते हैं, सुंदर दिखेगा. और अरे कुछ नहीं यार, दिन भर विंडोज़ में काम होता है, रात में इस पे थोड़े कीज का. ठीक है, हम लोग यहाँ क्या डेव यूज़ में ले रहा है, लैपटॉप को. लैपटॉप और यहाँ पे हमने डायरेक्टली कॉल कर लिया लैपटॉप का एक मेथड कंपाइल. ठीक है, और ठीक है, प्राइवेट कर दिया, यहीं यूज़ होगा ये. और यहाँ पे हमने ऑटो वायर कर दिया, ऑटो वायर्ड, ऑटोमेटिकली वायर कर दिया डेव को लैपटॉप से. और चेक करते हैं कि 500 एरर आती है क्या. असली 500 एरर नहीं, हमारा ये मैसेज 500 एरर. तो हाँ, 500 एरर आ गया. मस्त यार. ऑटो वायर ने हमारा, मतलब बेसिकली जो IOC का प्रिंसिपल था उसमें हमने एक डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन देखा कल, ये गेट बीन्स करके, और एक अब हमने देख लिया ऑटो वायर कि ये अपने आप ही बनाएगा. इंटरेस्टिंग. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं.
check it, we have to run it. So we'll just relaunch this application and you can see we got the same output without the new keyword. So that's the beauty of auto wiring. Okay. And you can do that in multiple places, not just here. And basically when you do it here, it is called a field injection. So when you do that on the top, it is field injection. Remember when we talked about dependency injection, we talked about 3 different types: field injection, constructor injection, setter injection. So when you do it here, that's your field injection. But let's say if you don't want to do that here, what's the other option? You can use a constructor here. So I can say def, and in the constructor, you can pass the object of laptop, and you can say laptop is equal to, this dot laptop is equal to laptop. If you're not sure what this line is, go through the video of this keyword on YouTube. So search for this keyword in Java and you will know what I did here. Okay, so now this is how it does the constructor injection. You don't have to use auto-wire that, it is optional. So when you run this, this also works. So this is constructor injection. Otherwise, if you don't want to use constructor injection, see if you just uncheck, if you just comment the auto-wire and constructor injection, if you try this, you will get the same error which we were getting before. So those things are working, okay? Let me try this setter injection. So what I will do is I will just create a setter method which is public void set laptop. And I will say laptop, this dot laptop is equal to laptop. Okay, so now I got the setter injection or setter method. Let's try if this works. Now when you do that, it is still giving you an error. So by default, setup will not be going for auto wiring. You have to say auto wire here. Now when you mention auto wire, then it will behave like the way we want. It will do the setter injection.
ठीक है. मेरे दिमाग में क्या था कि जहाँ से हम कॉल कर रहे हैं डेव को, उससे पहले हमें एक लैपटॉप बनाना पड़ेगा और लैपटॉप को सेट करना पड़ेगा डेव में, बट ऐसा नहीं है. ओके, कंस्ट्रक्टर का भी
We have not done for the constructor. You can do it. It will not give you error. But even if you skip that, it is by default picking it. So by
देखे ऐसे नहीं. हाँ,
for constructor, it is default. It is optional. But for field injection and for setter injection, you have to use auto wire. Which is better? Constructor and setter is better. Field is not. But you will see me using that in the upcoming videos, is because I want to keep this simple so that you will understand the project, or you will understand how Spring Framework works behind the scene. I want to do one more thing here. So what I will do is I will just go with the auto wiring field injection, and let me remove, or let me just comment this constructor and setter. Let's only focus on the auto wiring here. Now question arises, how exactly is connecting? How your Spring Framework knows that when you say AutoWire, it will connect with this class object, not some other classes, because in your project, you might be having multiple classes, right? So how it knows that we have to connect with laptop only? So what happens is, when you say auto wiring, it goes for by type. It is not searching for name. If you're thinking it's because of this name, no, it's not because of the name. It is because of the type of the class. So since you are saying laptop, it says laptop connected. But the question is, what if you try to apply loose coupling here? What I'm trying to say is, what if you create an interface out of this? So I will say refactor, extract the interface, and let's code for the interface. Because see, in this world, there's nothing called computer. It is either a laptop or desktop, but both are called as computer. Okay, do we got computer here? Or I don't know, I just clicked on OK. So we got computer here, and you can see computer is not having any method. So I will say void compile, and this will be declared. Let me just put that down here. I know there are multiple things open here, but yeah, we don't have a choice. You can see on the left hand side we got dev, here we got computer, and here we got laptop, and laptop implements computer. So basically what we are trying to do is we are coding for the interface. Okay, so here we got the interface which has method called compile, and laptop implements computer. Now what's the advantage of this? See, one of the advantages when you talk about developers, when you say you want to work on a project, when you join a company, your demand for MacBook, right? And that's the industry standards now. Everyone wants MacBook, but you don't get it. I'm still waiting for my MacBook. But anyway, the point is, when you join a company, they don't promise you that they will give you a laptop. They promise you that they will give you a computer. This can be a laptop or a desktop. And that's why a developer should not be dependent on the laptop. This is hard coding. A developer should be dependent on the not on computer, not on component, on the computer. And I will say comp here. And let me replace this with comp. So basically what I'm saying is, as a developer, you should focus on dependent on the computer, not on the laptop. And it depends upon the company what they want to provide you. They want to provide you laptop or desktop, that's their choice, right? Now, when you say computer, will this work? Because the add component we are writing on top of laptop, right? But here we are looking for computer. And as I mentioned before, it goes by type. So by type means it will search for the type of computer, and laptop is a type of computer. So if I relaunch it, and you will see it works. So basically it is not compulsory that you should use only laptop. You can also use computer, and that's the good practice to use. So we got computer here. But with this, I got one more thought. What if, now since it is searching for computer and you got laptop, that's a good thing, right? But what if there's a confusion? Okay, what confusion I'm talking about? Let me copy this laptop class and paste it here. Of course, we have to change the name of it. So I will say desktop. And now you can see I got a desktop class as well. And there are so many windows open. Let me close computer. Now we know that computer is an interface which has only one method. Let me close it. We got two classes here. One is a desktop and one is a laptop. And both are implementing computer, and the method also same, compile and compile, is because they're implementing computer. Here I will just write a different thing, compiling with 404 bugs, but faster. And now you can see we got two different implementation, right? Now my question to you, we got two classes. Both are implementing computer, so both are type of computer. Both have component on top of it. So basically in your container, you will have now three objects, right? So this is for the dev, this is for the laptop, and this is for the desktop. It's a desktop here. So basically I got three objects. And now in the developer, when you say AutoWire with computer, which object it will connect with? Laptop or desktop? Confusion, right? It's like you're joining a company and then they are giving you two options and you're confused because on the desktop you will get with the same amount of price, desktop works faster. Plus it is connected to the high power source. Laptop is portable, so you're confused there. And that's what is happening with Spring now. So let me
Shankar, already seen. Nice, Shankar.
read on this and see what Spring says. Okay, so we have not got the error, but we got the error, not the right one, but we got the error. The error says application failed to start. Reason, field comp, this one, is in this particular dev class required a single bean. I mean, of course, right? We want only one object, but two are found.
Every developer needs this Chrome extension. Daily.dev is a completely free to use Chrome extension used by over...
And this is what happens when you're confused between two things. One is desktop and one is laptop. Which one should I pick for? And it's basically confused. How do we solve this? One of the ways you can delete the desktop class. It will solve the problem.
Wow.
Or you can basically remove the add component on top of desktop. So now what you're doing is you're saying in the container you only got one object of laptop. We don't have the object for desktop. So there will not be any confusion there. It will pick up the laptop part. But what if you have a component here and you don't have a component on top of laptop? In this case, it will pick up the desktop, and you can see it says faster, so this desktop. But what if both has it? Now that's a problem, right? Now in this case, in case of confusion, you can use certain annotation or one annotation. So, you know, when you have two options, sometimes one thing becomes your preference. Let's say for me, I prefer desktops, but maybe you prefer laptop. So in this case, on top of your laptop, you can use one annotation called primary. So what's the use of primary? In case of confusion, this class will be preferred. And now when you say component on both, but when you run it, it will prefer the laptop. You can see it doesn't say it's faster, so that's laptop. But what if you write primary on both? Not a good idea, but let's see what happens. When you say primary on both of them, again there will be confusion, but this time it is giving you different error. But yeah, it says the same thing. It says more than one primary being found among the candidates. So not a good idea, but yeah, this one way you can put up primary on one class. What if you don't want to mention primary? What if you want to say component? Then you can decide in this level. So you can also use something called a qualifier. Now in the qualifier, you can mention the name of your class. So you can mention laptop here. Okay, not the name of the class, but the name of the instance. See, by default, this instance will have some name, or we say a bean name. So for the laptop, it will be your class name, but without the capital letter, the first capital letter. So if it is laptop, it will be laptop, but with small l. So that's the name you have to pick up here. Okay, so when you say qualifier, in case of confusion,
ज़्यादा चीजें हो गई हैं. रुको. सबसे पहले शुरू से शुरू करते हैं. 3 तरह की वायरिंग देखते हैं पहले तो। ओके, ऑटो वायर्ड लैपटॉप ऑटो वायर कर दिया। ये हुआ हमारा फील्ड इंजेक्शन। अगर हमें फील्ड इंजेक्शन नहीं करना, एक मिनट, ये तो चल ही रहा था ना। हाँ, आई एम ए डेवलपर, आई बिल्ड थिंग्स, ठीक है। और इसके ऊपर 500 एरर, या इसको थोड़ा अच्छा बना देते हैं। ये है हमारे लैपटॉप का 500 एरर, कूल। अब दूसरा तरीका, इसको तो बंद ही कर देते हैं। हेलो जावा किसी काम की है क्या हमारे? फिलहाल नहीं। डेव, दूसरा इंजेक्शन, ये है हमारा कंस्ट्रक्टर इंजेक्शन। कंस्ट्रक्टर में हमने डेव का एक कंस्ट्रक्टर बनाया और यहाँ पे लैपटॉप पास कर दिया, और लैपटॉप यहाँ बोल दिया दिस डॉट लैपटॉप इज इक्वल टू लैपटॉप, और ऑटो वायर हमने हटा दिया। सेमीकोलन, ठीक है। तो यहाँ पे हमें ऑटो वायर लगाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, ऑप्शनल था वो। एक बार चेक कर लेते हैं। डेमो एप्लीकेशन रन, लैपटॉप की 500 एरर हमें मिल गई। ओके ओके, ये काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है। इसको देखना पड़ेगा इंटरनली कैसे चला रहा है ये। ओके, ठीक है, खैर। और तीसरा तरीका हो गया हमारा सेटर इंजेक्शन। सेटर इंजेक्शन का मतलब हो गया, हम यहाँ पे एक मेथड बना देंगे सेट लैपटॉप का। ओ मस्त, ठीक है। सेट लैपटॉप का एक बन गया। कंस्ट्रक्टर इंजेक्शन बंद कर देते हैं, और प्राइवेट तो हमें बनाना ही पड़ेगा, ठीक है। अगर हम ये चलाएंगे तो हमें एरर मिल जानी चाहिए। तो अगर हम ये चलाएंगे तो हमें एरर मिल गई, नल पॉइंटर, कि यार तुमने 25 नंबर लाइन पे कंपाइल यूज़ कर लिया बट सेट नहीं हुआ ये। तो सेटर के लिए हमें अगेन ऑटो वायर्ड लगेगा। ओके, अब अगर हम चलाएंगे तो ये आ गया लैपटॉप का 500 एरर। ओके ठीक है, ये हुई पहली परेशानी सॉल्व। फील्ड इंजेक्शंस हमें यूज़ नहीं करने चाहिए, बट इस एग्जांपल के लिए हम यूज़ करेंगे। ओके ठीक है, करने क्या चाहिए? सेटर मुझे बेटर लग रहा है इन तीनों में, पर यूज़ केस के अकॉर्डिंग होगा। अभी हम बहुत नए हैं जो हम साइड पिक करें, बट फिर भी सेटर मुझे बेटर लग रहा है। ठीक है। तो फिलहाल के लिए इसको सेटर पे रखते हैं। सेटर पे नहीं रखते हैं, इस पे रखते हैं, ऑटो वायर्ड पे। और ये 3 तरीके हमने देख लिए हैं, तीनों को कमेंट कर देता हूँ मैं। ठीक है जी, ये हुआ है हमारे कमेंट एक साथ। और अब लैपटॉप पूरा था हमारे पास, फिर हमने बना दिया एक कंप्यूटर इंटरफेस। तो न्यू जावा फाइल इंटरफेस, और नाम हमने रख दिया कंप्यूटर डॉट जावा। इसके अंदर एक मेथड बनाया कंपाइल का। क्विक फिक्स, अच्छा रिटर्न, ठीक है। तो ये बन गया हमारा, इसको बंद कर देते हैं। ये बन गया हमारा कंपाइल। डेव जो है हमारा, सॉरी लैपटॉप जो है, तुम हटो ज़रा, लैपटॉप आओ इधर। कंप्यूटर हमारा इंटरफेस है, लैपटॉप अब इनहेरिट करेगा, तो इम्प्लीमेंट्स करेगा हमारे कंप्यूटर को। और अगर ये ऐसा करता है तो हम डेव को लैपटॉप की जगह कंप्यूटर दे सकते हैं डायरेक्ट। तो ये हमने कंप्यूटर दे दिया, कंप्यूटर, और यहाँ से हम यूज़ कर लेंगे कंप्यूटर का कंपाइल। अब यहाँ पे जब वायरिंग होगी तो ये ढूंढेगा कैसे कि इसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कहाँ पे है, कंपोनेंट्स ढूंढेगा। ये कंपोनेंट हमारे कंप्यूटर के पास तो है नहीं, तो ये चाइल्ड में देखेगा और चाइल्ड में इसको लैपटॉप में मिल जाएगा, तो ये लैपटॉप का ये वाला मेथड कॉल कर देगा। ओके, देखते हैं। 500 एरर, लैपटॉप की 500 एरर है ना। अब पंगा कहाँ पड़ा? पंगा यहाँ पड़ा कि कंप्यूटर हमारे पास लैपटॉप भी है और डेस्कटॉप भी है। ऐसे नहीं बनाएंगे, वैसे ही बनाएंगे। अब से न्यू जावा फाइल क्लास डेस्कटॉप, डेस्कटॉप को भी हमने इम्प्लीमेंट कराया कंप्यूटर से। ठीक है, रोएगा भाई। इम्प्लीमेंटेड मेथड, और यहाँ ओवरराइड में हमने लगा दिया अपना मैसेज। वहाँ पे क्या लगाया था लैपटॉप पे कि सिस्टम आउट लैपटॉप का 500, यहाँ पे हमने लगा दिया डेस्कटॉप पे कि ये है डेस्कटॉप का 500। अब यहाँ से हुई परेशानी शुरू कि अब हमारे पास दो कंपोनेंट्स हो गए। तो हमारा डेव बोल रहा है कि मैं ऑटो वायर कर दूंगा स्प्रिंग बूट, ऑटो वायर कर दूंगा कंप्यूटर को, बट मेरे पास दो चीज़ें हैं, मैं किससे ऑटो वायर करूँ? ठीक है, ये है हमारी परेशानी। ओके, और रन करो भाई, कर देते तो अच्छा लगता। यहाँ आई हमें परेशानी। क्या है हमारी परेशानी? कि एप्लीकेशन फेल टू स्टार्ट, फील्ड डेव रिक्वायर्स अ सिंगल बीन बट फाउंड टू। दो कौन से मिल गए? डेस्कटॉप पे मिल गए और लैपटॉप पे मिल गया। ठीक है, दिस मे बी ड्यू टू मिसिंग पैरामीटर। ओके, एक्शन क्या कर सकते हैं? कंसिडर मेकिंग वन ऑफ द बीन्स एज प्राइमरी, अपडेटिंग द कंज्यूमर टू एक्सेप्ट मल्टीपल बीन्स, using qualifier to identify which bean it should consume, ensure that your compiler is configured to parameter flag. You may need to update both your build tool setting as well as your IDE. ओके, रुक जाओ। अब एक तरीका क्या मिला हमें कि कंप्यूटर तो है ही, लैपटॉप और डेस्कटॉप में से हम जिसका चाहते हैं कि यूज़ हो उसको हम प्राइमरी कर देंगे। तो जब भी एम्बिग्विटी वाली सिचुएशन आएगी, जैसे अभी आई कि हमें पता नहीं है डेव को कि किसका हमें यूज़ करना है, कंप्यूटर हमने ऑटो वायर कर दिया, बट वो किसको किसका रेफरेंस ले, बेसिकली लैपटॉप का या डेस्कटॉप का। तो जब हम प्राइमरी एनोटेशन लगा देंगे तो वो डेस्कटॉप में चला जाएगा, मतलब डेस्कटॉप प्रेफरेंस में आ जाएगा, प्राइमरीली डेस्कटॉप का लो। चलो भाई, कसम। ठीक है, यहाँ पे आओ। ऐसे भी चला सकता हूँ ना मैं? नहीं, ऐसे। रन जावा से देंगे फिर। ये हो गया हमारा डेस्कटॉप का 500 एरर, है ना। ठीक है, यहाँ तक तो बात ठीक है। अब पंगा कहाँ था? तिलस्कू ने बोला, नवीन रेड्डी सर ने बोला कि दोनों पे लगा दो प्राइमरी। ठीक है, फिर परेशानी। अब क्या परेशानी कि दोनों में लगा दिया है। अब फिर हमारा सिस्टम परेशान हो गया कि यार टू डिस्प्ले कंडीशन वगैरह वगैरह, रीन एन एप्लीकेशन विद डीबग इनेबल, डीबग वीबग देख लो, अनसेटिस्फाइड डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन। ओके, ये है हमारी एरर। एरर क्रिएटिंग बीन विद डेव, unsatisfied dependency through the field computer, no qualifying bean computer avail more than one primary found on the candidates। ठीक है जी, डेस्कटॉप एंड लैपटॉप दो पे हमें प्राइमरी बीन्स मिल गए, तो फिर से कंफ्यूज हो गया हमारा स्प्रिंग बूट की चाहता क्या है। ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है, यहाँ तक समझ में आ गया मुझे। अब
Fusion, it will pick up the laptop. So now if you run this, we got laptop. You can also do it for the desktop and it works. So basically this is
एक कीड़ा है थोड़ा सा, रुको। किसको प्रेफरेंस देगा ये? हमने दोनों पे प्राइमरी लगा दिया है ना। प्राइमरी लगाने के बाद हम डेव पे गए, डेव में हमने यहाँ पे बोल दिया कि यार इस जगह पे फ़िलहाल क्वालिफायर लगा दिया, और यहाँ पे हमने बोला कि यूज़ करो लैपटॉप। कूल, अब देखते हैं, चलोगे सर यहाँ से? हाँ चल गए, ठीक है। तो लैपटॉप का इसने कॉन्टेक्स्ट ले लिया। ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है। अब अब हम एक काम करते हैं, लैपटॉप से हटाते हैं प्राइमरी। अब हमारा प्राइमरी शिफ्ट लगा है डेस्कटॉप पे, तो देखते हैं प्राइमरी को ये कंसीडर करेगा पहले या फिर हमारे क्वालिफायर को कंसीडर करेगा। कूल। लैपटॉप को कंसीडर करा क्योंकि वो क्वालिफायर में था, और प्राइमरी किस में लगा था, डेस्कटॉप में। ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है, इसका मतलब क्वालिफायर का हमारा जो वजन है वो ज़्यादा है प्राइमरी से। ठीक है, ये बात भी जच गई, आगे देखते हैं।
This is how you do auto wiring. So in this video, we have not just talked about the auto wiring, we have talked about primary and qualifier, and we have seen how do we code for the interfaces. Yeah, lengthy video, but I think worth it. So I hope you got some idea behind the scene how auto wiring is working. We have talked about Spring Framework, but then when we started coding, in between we talked about Spring Boot, and the project which we have created is done with the help of Spring Boot. And things are a bit easy, right? But what if you don't want to use Spring Boot? What if you want to work on a Spring Framework? So there are two reasons why this video is important. First, what if the project you are working on in your company or maybe by yourself, you don't want to use Spring Boot, or you don't have a choice of using a Spring Boot? So this video becomes important to understand how do you work with Spring Framework. Second reason for this video is, in this video you will understand what is happening behind the scene.
Hello, Moto.
कृति सनोनी अच्छी हरकत नहीं है भाई, पढ़ाई कर रहा है।
Right, how Spring analyze the configuration and what are different aspect of this configuration. So we'll talk about it. Of course, we have discussed those things in the Spring Boot as well, but when you do it here, it will make much more sense. So the project which we have here, again a simple project. What we have done till now is we got three different classes. We got developer, we got desktop and laptop, and then a developer needs a computer. It can be a desktop or laptop, and that's what we are doing here. But if you see, nowhere we have done any configuration. Basically, the Spring Boot analyze these annotations, and then based on that, it will create a project for you and it will make it work for you. But then, as I mentioned, there is no XML file, there is no separate Java class where you are doing all this configuration. So what if you don't want to use Spring Boot? I want to use a normal Spring framework now. So what I will do is I will just go back here and create a new project. So let's go to here, the IntelliJ IDE. Of course, any IDE will work. You will click on new, click on project, and I don't want to create a Spring project now, because when you create a Spring project, it will be Spring Boot project. So what I will do is I will click on Maven archetype. See, when you talk about a project like Spring, when you talk about different frameworks, you have to use certain build tool to create those projects. Of course, in Spring Boot also we have used Maven. Here also we are going to use Maven. Of course, we can also use Gradle there. But let's stick to Maven. So here I'm going to create a project. I will say demo Spring. That's my project name. And I will keep that in downloads. Doesn't matter where it is. Next, the JDK version. So make sure that you first of all click on this Maven archetype. Or if you're using Eclipse, it will give you option of creating a Maven project. So select that. The JDK version, in this machine, I have 21.
हमारे इधर तो कुछ होगा नहीं ऐसा, या तो फोल्डर ही ओपन करेंगे हम। यहाँ तो है नहीं, चलो ठीक है, कोई ना, देख के सीख लेंगे ये वाली चीज।
I will just go with that. And then it is asking you for the catalog. See, Maven as a build tool also has its way of creating a project. It will give you a basic structure of a project. Now, based on different framework, based on different services which you want to use, they provide you certain archetypes. Archetypes is basically your project structure. So they provide you different archetypes which you can use. Of course, you can build this archetype, or you can build this project from scratch without using their particular template. But they give you certain templates to use. And there are certain templates which they have inbuilt, and there are some templates which have been sourced. So example, if I click on catalog here, you can see there's an option of internal, then also Maven Central. So there are certain templates or archetypes you can use it from Maven Central. So if I choose internal here, and if I expand this archetype, there are limited options. You can see, you can actually at least count it. There's a template for a J2EE application, for portlets, for quick start. We are going to use quick start, and we have web app as well. But if you click on Maven Central, you will see a lot of options. You can see it is loading here, loading done. And if I expand now, there are so many options here. You can just, sometimes it's confusing which one to choose, and that's why we're not going to use this. Maybe there is already application available for Spring Boot. As you can see, it is here. Spring Boot 3 REST API archetype. So you can use this archetype. It will give you a template to work with. I will stick to internal, and let's create a quick start project. So I can just click on quick start here, and the version, just stick to it. There are certain additional properties. We can skip that. Advanced settings. This is where you can mention your group ID, which is already com.telisco. The artifact name is demo spring, and I can click on create here. And I'm going to create a new window because maybe I want to use the old project code. So this is my project. This is my Spring project. Now, you know what? Basically, this is a Spring project, but only with a name. Nowhere in the project we are using Spring feature. See, when you say Spring feature, basically we have to add a dependency for Spring, and we don't have it here. If
perm file क्या मतलब है इस बात का? अच्छा, ये ऊपर है. ओके, डिपेंडेंसीज हमारे पास स्प्रिंग फ्रेमवर्क का बूट का स्टार्टर वेब है और स्प्रिंग बूट स्टार्टर टेस्ट है. टेस्ट क्लासेस के लिए टेस्ट क्लासेस अलग ट्रॉमा है भाई. ठीक है.
you can see, we don't have a Spring dependency. We have to add that. So that's one. Next, if you see the external dependency, of course, we don't have anything here. We don't even have the configuration for Spring. We have not done for Spring Boot as well, but here we have to create a configuration file.
Configuration म्हणजे
to make it work. So now what we will do is, let's create a simple code. In fact, we can actually use those codes which we already have. So maybe I will just try to reuse. So let's go to the Spring Boot app, and I want to use these two classes, dev and okay, let's only use dev. I'll just copy this and paste it here. So we got dev class, and we don't need all these annotations now. We don't need AutoWire, other stuff. Or maybe we don't even need a computer. Maybe I could have just typed it by myself. Sometimes being lazy is an additional work you get. Okay, so I just wanted these two things, and I don't even want all these packages. A simple class, nothing fancy. You can see we got a dev class which has a build method, and it says working on the awesome project. Maybe you can just type it instead of copying it from the older project. And now I want to create object of dev inside this app. So this is your main code, the main Java code. First, I want to check if this project is running. I mean, this is the important step you should do. Whenever you create a new project, without typing any code, just run it to check if it is working. That's important. So here I don't want to print hello world. We just want to, okay, I don't even want the comments here. So what I want here is to create object for dev so that I can call build. So the idea is to call build, but for that I have to create object of dev. So I will say dev obj equal to new dev, and then I'm going to say obj.build. So this should work because we are creating the object by ourselves. Nowhere we are using Spring yet. So it says working on the awesome project, so we are happy. But then we don't want to say new dev here, right? This is what I want to get from Spring. I want Spring to create this object. Now, can I use
push notifications have a delivery rate of 90%, making it an in-demand service.
We have seen in the Spring Boot, can we use Spring? Can we use component here? First of all, we don't have this component option is because we don't have Spring Boot or Spring Framework here. And even if you use Spring Framework component, it will not able to configure that. So this will not work. So how do we make it work? The first thing is, if you want the dev here, we have to work with the container. Remember when we have talked about a project where you can have multiple classes, and then you also have something called a JVM here, in which you will be having a section where you will be having heap memory and stuff, and then inside that you will be having your IOC container, and then inside this you will be having objects. But unfortunately we don't have the object yet. So how do we get this object? So even before you get the object, the first thing you need to get is the container. How will you get the container? And we have seen that, right, before. If you want to work with the container, we have to create object of application context. You need object of application context, and we don't have the object. First of all, we don't even have this interface in the project. When I say control space, you're not getting the package of it. Reason, this is not part of a Java. This is a part of Spring Framework. So if you want this to work, we need to get the external libraries for Spring. And how do we do that? So we have to add this Spring dependency. So we already have a JUnit dependency. Apart from this, we need to get the dependency for Spring. But not everyone remembers the dependency name and the artifact ID and the version number. We don't know that, right? Or maybe some superhumans knows this by heart. I don't know. So how do we get it? So it's very simple. What you can do is you can go to one of the most famous plays for the dependency, which is called a Maven repository. You can just go here.
एक सेकंड हम भी Maven repository search browse explore और यहाँ पे हम सर्च करते हैं Spring context web सब कुछ ठीक है.
And search for, in fact, it already had Spring context. Is it so famous?
Spring context, okay, this one. ठीक है.
Or maybe they are tracking me what I'm doing. They got so many libraries, why it is only promoting Spring? Maybe even they're tracking me. So here, basically you have to search for Spring context. And you can see this is what I want. So when I click on this, I can select any version. So normally I prefer the version which doesn't have any vulnerabilities, and you can see they give you warning as well. 5.3 has the vulnerability. We can skip that. 6 is a version which we are going for. Which one to choose? First of all, make sure that you don't have any security issue here. Second, go with the version which is not latest, but if it is latest and it is used by so many projects, that's fine. You can go with this 6.1.6. So you can see this version, basically you can just copy this, or if you're not using Maven, you can even get it from the Gradle. So you can just use that. So I'm using Maven. I will just copy this and replace this dependency which we have.
एक सेकंड. POM डाउनलोड कर रहे हैं, jar डाउनलोड कर रहे हैं और ओके Maven Gradle implementation group ये name ये version ये ओके Gradle short implementation name ठीक है जी, ठीक है. हम लोग Maven यूज़ कर रहे हैं तो ये रखेंगे, वर्जन हम ये रख देंगे. ठीक है. मैंने सुना है वर्जन ना लिखो तो लेटेस्ट ले लेते हैं. तो कई बार होता है स्पेसिफिक वर्जन का रिक्वायरमेंट, तो स्पेसिफिक वाला इसका 152 ही है अभी एज ऑफ सितंबर 12. यहाँ पे अच्छा नंबर है तो मे बी ये लेंगे. ठीक है, बेस्ड ऑन प्रोजेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट. ठीक है, गॉट इट.
Have written with the new thing. I don't want to market the Spring Maven repository. So yeah, so this is how basically you create, you get the dependency. Oh, but it's not coming here. Why it is not coming here? It's because we have to reload the changes. So in IntelliJ, you have to load this Maven changes, but in Eclipse, it will happen. Most of the time, it happens by default. So I will click on load Maven changes, and now you can see we got the dependencies for Spring context. And once you have that, let's go to our app and let's say control space. Okay, there was some issue with the importing. It should normally work, but I don't know what's wrong. Or maybe I'm writing a wrong spelling, or maybe IntelliJ has some issues. Anyway, so I got the context. I will say this is context equal to. Now, how do we create this object? So let me just comment this too for time being. So how do we create this object? So of course, you can say new application context, but application context itself is an interface. So you can't get object of application context. In that case, we can go for the classes which implements application context. And one of the class is class path XML application context. We are going to use this because initially we'll start with the XML configuration. We can do it with annotations as well or Java-based configuration. configuration. Let's go with XML, and that's it. You got this object. And now once you do this, this line basically creates the container. So our job is done. The container is ready. But with that container, how do I get the object? It's very simple. You can simply say context dot get bean. And here you can mention what bean you want. Maybe I want the bean of dev dot class. Our job is done and it should work. Let's see if that works. Let's run this because we got the container. I'm expecting the object is there. I just have to use that. Let's run this.
रुको थामो bean factory is not in एक मिनट चीटिंग नहीं कॉन्टेक्स्ट लिया हमने get bean किया तो यही था ठीक है बताओ
And no, it's not working. So it says bin factory not initialized or already closed. So it says before accessing bin via application context. First of all, what is bin factory? So the way you have application context, the container is created with the help of bin factory. It manages the container. So in the earlier versions of Spring, we used to use bin factory, but now we use application context. So it says something is wrong. I mean, it's closed. I'm not able to create the container. I mean, it's creating a container, but it is closed now. So how do you configure your container? Because in the container, we don't have this object of dev. And that's where...
सेकंड हमने जब कंटेनर बनाया था तो उसके अंदर हमारे प्राइमरी सोर्स और ये डाला था प्राइमरी सोर्स कौन है हमारे ये वाली एप्लीकेशन जो हमारी स्प्रिंग बूट एप्लीकेशन है तो उसी तरह का कुछ
You have to create a XML configuration. But how do we do that? So
XML
it's simple actually. In this bracket, you can mention the XML configuration name. So I will say spring.xml. But we have to create this XML file. Okay. And if you run this with just by that statement, of course, this name can be anything. It says the XML is not found. And where it is searching for it is searching for that file in the class path resource. Okay. Since it is a class path, we have to go with class path. So what I will do is in the main folder, I will create
XML file
Need to run Windows on your Mac?
नहीं क्यों
Parallels desk.
a directory called resources. Normally it is there, but maybe it is not showing that in
हमारे
the
पास भी होना चाहिए रिसोर्सेज ठीक है तो रिसोर्सेज के अंदर हम बेसिकली XML बना देंगे हमारी प्रॉपर्टीज हैं यहाँ पे ठीक है
IntelliJ IDEA. Just check if you have resources folder. In this resource folder, you will create a file called spring.xml, and this is where you have to do the configuration. And if you just create a file and if you do nothing here and relaunch it, this time it should not say file not found. It should give you some different error. It says line number 1, column number 1, premature end of file because we have not done anything. But what is this configuration? Now we are basically trying to create a Spring project without Spring Boot. And of course, for that, we have to do a lot of configuration. And to achieve that, we have basically created the project. And in that, we do have a dev class here in which we have a method called build. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to call the build. But for that, we need object of dev. And then we want Spring Framework to create the object, which is actually not happening because if I run this, this is what you are getting. We were getting the error which says premature end of file. Which file I'm talking about is the spring.xml, because if you want Spring to create the object, we have to do the configuration, and this configuration will be done in the XML file, and this is empty at this point. I don't want this to be empty. We have to write some configuration using which you can create the object. And if you have this question in your mind, why we are using XML when we are happy with Spring Boot, there are two reasons. One is, what if your project which you are maintaining is a legacy project? In that case, of course, they will be having, or they might be having XML configuration, so you should know. Second is, if you want to understand what is happening behind the scene for Spring Boot, this configuration will help you there. Okay, so let's get started. Now, if you want to do this configuration, even before that, when you talk about this line number 10 here, and when you say you are creating a context behind the scene, we got the container. So we do have a container ready, but in this container, we don't have the object yet. So if you want to create the object, or if you want Spring to create the object, you have to mention that here. And every class which Spring manages, they're called Spring Beans, right? Or managed beans. So what I will do is, since we want to create beans, I will use a beans tag. Now, this is how you work with XML. If you're new to XML, basically you can compare XML with HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. So basically in the HTML, you have some tags which you can use. And who understands those tags is your browser. So in the browser, it has a definition of all those tags which you're using. Maybe you're using HTML tag, body tag, or a p tag, or a div tag. So basically your browser knows those tags because they have the definition of it. In XML, you can use any tag which you want. There's no compulsion that you should use this tag or those tags. Even if I want, I can use the Naveen tag here. I mean, that's my choice. I want to use Naveen tag, I can use that.
Tags,
but when it comes to Spring Framework, we have to use certain tags which has their own definitions. And we do that with the help of DTD files, which is document type definitions. You don't have to get into that much. Just imagine XML, you can use your own tags, provided you have a definitions for it. Now, we are using some tags here, and we
XML का बेसिकली हमको पता है ना ऑलरेडी सीन डेटा ट्रांसफर में यूज़ होता था, फिर उसकी जगह अब JSON यूज़ हो रहा है क्योंकि वो बेटर है, फास्टर है, तो ये वो XML है. ओके, बीन्स हमने बना सकते हैं.
do have a definitions for it, and I will show you that in some time. But we have to use a beans tag because you will be having multiple classes and multiple objects.
ठीक है.
And inside this beans tag, you can create multiple bean tag, right? So you can have one. Depending upon your requirement, you can have multiple bean. Now, in this bean, you can mention which class bean you want, which class object or which class you want Spring to manage. So I can mention the class name here with the help of class attribute, and you can mention the class name, which is dev in this case. Now, simply class name will not work. You have to basically provide the qualified name for it. So in this case, it is com._. And then optionally, you can also provide the. Now, where this will be useful, example, if you go back to your app in this line number 11, what we are doing is we were using dev.class in the earlier example. You can also use dev here. So earlier, basically, we were using dev. But you just have to make sure that since we are using dev, this getBin returns you the object type. Just typecast it with dev and that should work. Going back here, so now we do have a definition, right? Or we do have the bean created. So the configuration is done. Let's try. So what I will do is I will just relaunch this and see what happens. Okay, still it is giving you error. It still says it is invalid, but why? This time it is giving you some different error. It says line number 4, which is this, beans. It says cannot find the declaration of element beans. Oh, this is weird. So basically, we don't have a definition for it. As I mentioned before, you can use any tag provided you have a definition for it. For this bean, we don't have a definition. So in this case, you don't have to buy a definition. What you can just do is you can just go to Google and search for Spring 6 bean configuration XML and look at this file or this link. Click here and it talks about the configuration. Just go down and search for this one. And you can simply copy this and replace the beans, because in this, if you can see, there's also a bean tag here or beans tag here. Just replace it.
XML and S URLs XSI,
and we are good. Okay, beans not 2 times, only once. And I will just remove this. So what we are doing is we are providing the definition for beans here. Okay, and with this, if I relaunch it, hopefully this will work. Okay, hopefully I said, but it's not working. There's some problem. It says line number 4, there is some issue with the parsing. Some problem with the first line. Is it the issue? Okay, so maybe there was some issue with this line here. Okay, I'll just simply get rid of this. Maybe there's some extra character which I can't see. Anyway, so if I relaunch this, we have provided the bean definition and this is working. It says working on the awesome project. So by doing this, what we are doing is we are asking our Spring framework that you are responsible to create the object for dev, and which we have done. And that's why you are getting this object here.
जो हमने कंपोनेंट से किया था वहाँ पे वो बेसिकली यहाँ पे ऐसे हुआ है. Okay.
So that's our first one. How about one more class? Let's say in this particular project, let me create one more class and let me name this class as laptop. Okay, a simple class, nothing fancy. Yes, I'm going to print, compiling. And now if I go back to Spring, you can see we are just mentioning dev here, right? And one more thing, what I will do is I will just comment this section. Now, how many classes we have in our project? Of course, we have 3 classes, but then we are concerned about the two classes because app only has a main method. So we have two classes, dev and laptop, which we created. A normal class like dev, a normal class like laptop. And now if I run this, tell me what, just think about it. If I just run this code, how many objects will be created inside the container? Or how many classes object will be created inside the container? Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 2? So let me know in the comments. So if I run this, let's see. Okay, first of all, how we will see? We don't even have an idea, right? We are not printing anything. See, the thing is, if you look at the XML file, when you execute this line, it goes to the XML file. In the XML, we are creating the object only of one class, or we are saying only one bean tag. So it will create the object only of that class which you have mentioned here, which is dev. Okay. And to prove that, what I will do is I will just have a constructor here. I'll say public dev, which is a constructor. And in this, I'm going to print dev constructor. And I'm going to do the same thing in the laptop. So I will have a constructor here. Of course, this should not be dev, it should be laptop. And here also, I'm going to replace this with laptop.
MongoDB, Express, React, Node.js, system design, advanced.
Okay, well, simple class, simple constructor, nothing fancy. Okay, and now if I try to run this, so if we don't get any output, that means none of the object got created. But let's see what happens. So we only got dev constructor. That means we got one object, and that too of the developer. Reason? In the Spring XML, we have mentioned only that. What if I create for the laptop as well? So I can just reuse my code. Instead of saying copy paste, reuse sounds good. And we don't need that much of space between being closing. And here I will say laptop, and here the class name is laptop. Okay. And the moment I do that, and if I run this, let's relaunch it. And you can see now it says dev and the laptop as well. Both got created. But we are not using them in the code, right? We are just saying execute this line, create the container, and as soon as the container is created, it will simply look at the XML file and say, okay, we do have two beans here mentioned. Let me create the object for them. Okay, so and then in your container, you basically have two objects, one for your dev and one for your laptop. But the question is, what if you mention the dev one more time? So we'll just copy this and paste it here, and let's say dev one. We got different ID. So now let me know in the comments how many objects it will create. 1, 2, 3. Of course, it should be more than 2, or 2 or more than 2. So let's try, and you can see it is calling the dev constructor 2 times. That means it depends upon how many times you mention bean. If you say once, it will get one object.
मुझे स्प्रिंग चाहिए इसमें VS कोड में. अगर मैं ये सेम प्रोजेक्ट कॉपी करूं और इसमें से बॉम्बे से चीज़ें हटा लूं तो ये स्प्रिंग प्रोजेक्ट बन जाएगा क्या? ट्राई करते हैं. ट्राई करते हैं. एक मिनट पहले समझ लेते हैं क्या है.
If you say 2, it will say one more time, it will create another object for dev. So we got 2 objects for dev, right? On one for your laptop. So that's how basically you can configure your Spring framework to create the object. Now we can go for the next step, which is what if in the dev you need object of laptop. Now that will be tricky, right? Because now your dev, initially we were dependent on the Spring container to give you this dev, right? Dev object. And now inside dev, if you want a laptop object, now that's where the dependency will come. So till this point, we were able to work with Spring Boot. Then to achieve that, what we have done is we got this dev, we got this. We have done that in the configuration. So if I show you the configuration, which is spring.xml, we got, not using different way, we got a bean tag, which is dev1. And when you run this application, your Spring framework will see this and say, okay, it's my job to create these 3 objects, and it will do that for you. And in the container, basically in the IOC container, or you can call it, and 3 different beans. And the IDs for the, and for the third object, laptop, it is your laptop, right? So these are the IDs for it. Now, what we want to do is, let's say in the dev class, I have some properties. So in this particular video, let's discuss how do you work with the injections, the setter injection and the constructor injection. To do that, of course, what I want ultimately is a reference dot combine this one is just a reference. We have not assigned an object here, or we have not instantiated here, or we have not specified the memory here. So by default it will be null, and when you run this, it will give you a favorite error, which is null pointer exception, and we don't want it, right? So ultimately we want this object to be passed, but at this point I will just comment it. We'll use it later because this will not work. And to understand how do you inject, let's start simple. What I will do is let me create a simple variable here, maybe the variable name or variable, and build. I want app is a main class, right? If you don't want to do that from here, we can do one more thing. See, app is a main class, right? This is where you have your main method. And if you say you got this object here, let me just uncomment this. You got this object here of dev class, and you're calling build. Let me say I don't want to call build now. What I just want to do is I want to print the value for age. So what I will do is I will simply say sout and obj.age. Now, since it's an int variable, let me show you that. Let me just minimize this thing. We don't need that. Let me just put that here on the side. Yeah. Okay. So if you see age is an int variable, and when you try to access this, it will try to pick up the default value. So what do you think the default value for age is? Of course, it's an int value, so default value will be 0. And when you run this, you will get 0. Let me just try this. So run this app, and now you can see it prints 0. Yeah, we got this output as well, is because we were working with the constructor. Ignore that, we got this 0 here, right? Now I want to assign some values to it. And we can do that, right? So we can simply say int age is equal to some value, 8 or 10, because nowadays children at the age of 7, 8, they are doing programming. It's fun and weird at the same point. But anyway, the point is we have assigned a value to it. And if you have noticed, I'm not using private modifier here. That's on purpose, is because I want to use this variable directly here. Not a good practice, but since we are into learning stage, we want to see what are things happening behind the scene. So I'm doing that here, okay? And so we can pass it. Now what I will do is, I don't want to, of course, we should run this first just to see if this is working. And you can see we got 8. So you can assign the value from here, or you can assign the value from here as well. You can say obj.age, and you can set whatever value you want here. Let's say 18. And if I run this, it should be 18, is because initially you have assigned 8 when the object was creating. But then later on, when you are running this, after the object creation, you are replacing the value with 18, and that's why it is 18 here. Now, let me just make this variable as a private variable, because that's the ideal way. And I don't want to assign the value from here. Not a good idea to assign hard-coded values. Now, since this is a variable which is private, if you want to access this from outside, example, if you try to see that, it says age. So what I will do is say, hey, I want getter setters for this particular variable, and I got it. So you can see we got the getter, we got the setter, okay? And if you want to assign the value, this is not a good way. You can simply say, obj.getAge, right? And now if you run this, what you're expecting is, of course, we want 18, and that's what we got here. But what if you don't assign the value? Let's say we are not assigning a value here, 0. And if I run this, you can see we got 0. Cool. But now the point is, I want to assign this value using Spring Framework. So I don't want to do that here or here. I want to assign some value with the help of Spring. So I want to inject the value. How do I do that? Now, since we are saying we want Spring to do it, we have to do the configuration in this spring.xml file. And how do we do that? See, when you are creating this object here, what you can do is, in this particular bean tag, there are multiple options. You can assign properties, because ultimately these are called properties, right, for the object. So you can define a property. Now this is a inbuilt tag inside the Spring. So you can say property, and then in this property you can assign a name of a property. So which property you want to change? I want to change the value for the age property. With what? So you have to assign the value as well. So let's say the value is maybe different value, 12. I think this is the ideal age to start programming, not 8. So anyway, so we got a
ideal age to start programming at 12. 12 का मतलब 6-7 क्लास. हाँ, एक्चुअली मज़ा रहेगा. पता नहीं, थोड़ा बायस्ड है मेरा ओपिनियन, कि बायस्ड क्या, थोड़ा परेशानी वाला है, कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग है, मतलब बेसिकली. सही एज प्रोग्रामिंग स्टार्ट करने की 12 का मतलब तुम 6th क्लास में हो. 6th क्लास में अगर तुम कुछ चीज़ स्टार्ट कर रहे हो, अगर तुम्हें पसंद आ गई तो मज़ा आ जाएगा. 12th क्लास में हम इतना सीख चुके होंगे कि हम बीटेक वाले को या एक जॉब करते हुए या इनिशियल फेज में जो जॉब कर रहा है, क्या कहते हैं उसे, न्यूबीज को हम लोग ऑलरेडी छोड़ चुके होंगे पीछे, बट एट द सेम टाइम अगर 6th क्लास में तुम्हें कुछ चीज़ समझ नहीं आई और तुमने उसे पसंद नहीं किया, तो वो काफ़ी कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग हो सकता है। जैसे हिस्ट्री अधिकतर लोगों को स्कूल में पसंद नहीं आती, बट आगे जाके हिस्ट्री में काफ़ी इंटरेस्ट आने लगता है। सेम विथ आई थिंक माइथोलॉजी, सेम विथ आई थिंक मैथ्स, तो बचपन से पसंद आनी ज़रूरी है, वरना नहीं आती कभी भी पसंद। बट हाँ, मेजर प्रॉब्लम यही है कि 6th में हम लोग जिस तरह सोचते हैं उस तरह से हम लोग अब नहीं सोचते हैं 20 की एज में या 18 की एज में, तो बहुत जल्दी इंटरेस्ट लूज हो सकता है प्रोग्रामिंग पे, जो कि काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ है। सही एज 12, मे बी, आई डोंट एग्री, बट
age as 12, and now let's run this and let's see what happens. If you run this,
हाय I'm a video editor और
बहुत
सिर्फ ये aliens दिखाना और हवा में
you can see we got 12. That means we are assigning, okay, when I say we, Spring is assigning the value of 12 to age variable, right? So that's what is happening here. So when I say I'm getting this object, the object which got created inside your container, now it has a age variable and the value is 12. So the moment you create this instance, it will have the value 12 because of this setting here. But what about the dev one? Is it applied there as well? Let's try. So what I will do is I will just go back here and say dev one. And if you run this, you can see it is not for dev one. So when I say dev one, which is this particular thing here, the value for age is still 0 because we have not assigned the value for that.
Same.
And how do we know that? So if you see the bin, we're not assigning a property here. Okay. And since we are not using it, we can also remove it, right? So we can just go back here and say go back to dev because we don't have dev 1 at this point, and run this, it will go back to 12. So this is how basically you use setter injection. But we have one more, which is constructor injection. How do we do that? So what I will do is I will create one more constructor here, which is a parameterized constructor. So I'll just right click here and say, hey, generate. And I want to inject the value of age, not this string.xml file. And here, instead of using a property, because property will use setter, I can just comment that section and we can use something called a constructor argument. And in this, you can specify the value as whatever value you want. Let's say 14 in this case. And instead of, I will just say self-closing tags. Yeah. So instead of using a property, I'm going to use a constructor. This time it will use this particular constructor. And you can see when you say dev constructor, it was getting printed here, right? Because initially we were using a default constructor. Now, since we are using a parameterized constructor, I will just say dev1 constructor on this. Now, what will happen is with the help of this constructor argument tag, we can assign the value with the help of
एक सेकंड, कंस्ट्रक्टर आर्ग्यूमेंट, कंस्ट्रक्टर, एक डाउट आया मुझे, मल्टीपल अगर पैरामीटर्स हो तो या मल्टीपल आर्ग्यूमेंट्स हो तो, अच्छा इससे भी दिखाओगे, ये दिखाओ डायरेक्ट एक्सएमएल, चलो उड़ रहा था, ओके। ये बीन्स आए, बीन्स में हमारा एम्प्लॉय आया, आर्ग्स में हमने 10 वैल्यू दे दी, इंट दे दिया। यार ये तो बहुत मेहनत वाली बात हो गई यार, एक्सएमएल मैनेज करना पड़ेगा। ठीक है, स्प्रिंग बूट बेस्ट है भाई। एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट डॉट एक्सएमएल, ये रही, इसके अंदर हम एम्प्लॉयज़ पे आए, एम्प्लॉय में आके 10 दिया, इंट टाइप के वैल्यू, स्ट्रिंग बेस्ड वैल्यूज़ होगी तो डायरेक्टली हमने वैल्यू दे दी 10, ठीक है। सुनो, कौन सी है जावा पॉइंट, ओके। पास इंटीजर एंड स्ट्रिंग बोथ, अगर बोथ को पास करना है तो 10 और सुनो दे दिया हमने यार, इसमें मज़ा नहीं आया। मतलब टाइप अलग है तो हमने ये कर दिया, टाइप सेम होते तो नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है क्या? इसमें क्या है? हाँ, सिटी 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 स्ट्रिंग कंट्री, नाइस। आओ जी, एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट गाजियाबाद यूपी इंडिया। अच्छा, सीक्वेंस से चलेगा क्या गेम? ओके ओके ओके, गॉट इट। अब एक सवाल, अगर मान लो कंस्ट्रक्टर आर्ग्स है, पहला हमें नहीं देनी वैल्यू, तो हम नल पास करेंगे, ऐसा कुछ? आ जाओ। इंट स्ट्रिंग नेम लिस्ट वगैरह, वो अच्छा लिस्ट देना सिखा रहे हैं। यार ये तो बहुत मेहनत है भाई, इतनी मेहनत कौन करता है?
Constructor, and you can see it says dev1, right, which is the parameterized constructor output, and the value is 14. Cool. So that's how basically you can use constructor and setter. Okay, but there are certain things which you have to remember. In the property, we have used name. In constructor, we are not doing that. It's because we have a constructor which takes only one parameter. But if you want, you can also specify a name here. There's a name property here if you can use that. You can say age. But since we only have one parameter, you can skip that. If you have two parameters, and if you want to specify the sequence, you can also use index. You can specify for index 0, index 1. So at this point, we just have one. But let's say in case if you have two
एक सेकेंड रुकना था मतलब हमें बस।
parameter here, let's say age and salary. In that case, you can specify the index 0 for age and index 1 for salary. So you just have to say constructor arguments 2 times. Cool. So that's how basically you use a setter injection and the constructor injection. But then that was for this simple variable, right? What about a variable like laptop? Now this is not a simple variable. This is a reference variable, right? Which is you have a class reference there. And how do we achieve that? So what I will do is I will just comment this constructor. So we don't want to work with age anymore. So I can just comment that section. Let's only focus on the laptop. Now, when I say focus, what I want to do is in the dev, when you say build, right? Example, in the app, when you're calling this build will call the method called compile. And with those settings, okay, let me also comment this age. I don't want to print age. Let me run this. There's no age now. It's just a constructor. And you can see we got an error. It says the laptop, they cannot invoke is because we got null pointer exception. It says this laptop is null. Okay. Null is because we have not created the object. We just got the reference of it, which is here. So what I want to do is, we know that in the container, we do have the object of laptop. We have it here. We just have to inject this to the developer object, right? The instance. And how do we do that? Of course, we can use a Spring here. So don't you think laptop is also a property? What I can do is, for this particular dev, I can simply specify a property, but this time not for the age, but for the laptop. Right? And then we can assign a value to it. Okay, hold on. Now that's a problem. For the age, we can assign the value because that's a int variable. That's a primitive variable. Laptop is not a primitive variable. It's a reference variable. You can't simply assign a value to it. So what to do? So instead of assigning a value, we can use something. So if I say control space, you can see we get 2 options, not one. We get a ref and we get a value. So we can use ref for the reference. But the question is, what should we specify in the reference? Now that's a question. If you go down, we do have this laptop object here, right? And the ID for that is laptop. So the same ID. So instead of using laptop, let me just try one more thing. I will say lap1. So this is the ID we need to use here. I mean, we can also use laptop. I just don't want you to get confused between laptop. Is it the class laptop or the instance laptop or the name laptop? So I'll just...
Hello, Moto.
क्यों?
Lap1 I'm using here. So what we are trying to do is, we are saying, hey, I'm creating this object. Okay, so when I say Spring, when I say, hey, Spring, create the object, Spring says, okay, let me try to create the object for dev. But the moment it is trying to create the object, it will create the object for sure, but it will see at the property and say, hey, you know, we need to get the laptop reference here. And where do we find it? So the name of the reference is lap1. So it will search the container by saying, hey, do we have any object of the laptop or any object with the name lap1? And it will find that it is there, right? and it will try to connect it. So basically what we're doing is we are doing a wiring here. So we are wiring the laptop object into the dev object. So that wiring is what is helping to do that. But will it really work? Let's try. So what I will do is I will just run this, and we got the error. I was not expecting the error, but we got the error. Let's try to solve it now. So the error, if I go up, and it's good to get errors, you get something new every time. It says bean property laptop is not writable or invalid. Oh, okay. See, when we specify the property for the age, we have used getter setters for it. For the laptop, we have not specified the getter setters yet. My bad. So what I will do is we need to get the getters and setters. In fact, we need setters, not getter, but we'll have both. They come in the parcel. So I will say generate and getter set for laptop, and now we have it. Okay, I don't think it should complain now. Let's relaunch it. Oh, it's working. You can see it says compiling. So that was the issue. We have not specified the getter setters. And what we have done is we have specified a property for laptop, and we are saying that reference is lap1. Cool, right? So this is how basically you reference it. Now this is a setter injection for the reference variable. What about the constructor? Let's try. So what I will do is let's go back to the same constructor which we are using earlier, but instead of saying int age, let me say laptop, and here this dot laptop should be equal to laptop. Okay, so instead of age, I'm going for the laptop now, and in here we can specify in fact I will do that here. I will say constructor arguments, and then instead of using a value which we have used for int for the integer variable, let's use ref and say the same thing, which is lap1, and our job is done. So this is the constructor injection. Let me try this, and it works. You can see it says dev1, which is the constructor for the parameterized constructor, and we got compiling. So this is working. This is the constructor injection. Now, which is better? It depends. If the variable is something which is compulsory when you create the object, it's better to go with constructor. But if the variable is optional, you can go with setter, because if you say you want to use a constructor, that means you need to have it when you are creating the object for dev. Setter, you can set it later, because we can call the setter method later, not the constructor. So yeah, that's how basically you work with setter and the constructor injection with the help of primitive values and the reference values. So I hope it was fun. Now till this point,
थामो भाई, ऑटो वायर इन स्प्रिंग. ठीक है, स्प्रिंग की एक और वीडियो है, बट टाइम हो चुका है हमारे सोने का. मैं थोड़ी मेहनत कर रहा हूँ कि मेरा टाइम इम्प्रूव हो जाए सोने से आने का, तो थोड़ा दिन अच्छा रहता है, खुला खिला रहता है. ठीक है, तो आज के लिए इतना पे ख़त्म करते हैं. तो आज हम लोगों ने वायरिंग देख ली, ऑटो वायरिंग, और स्प्रिंग शुरू कर दिया. ठीक है, हालांकि स्प्रिंग मुझे अब पर्सनली समझ नहीं आ रहा है, ये समझ तो आ रहा है पर पसंद नहीं आ रहा है. मुझे समझ में आ रहा है कि क्यों स्प्रिंग बूट बेटर है. जब हम लेगेसी प्रोजेक्ट्स पे काम कर रहे हैं स्प्रिंग की, तो क्या उनको स्प्रिंग बूट पे मूव करना हार्ड है? ये मेरा अभी चल रहा है प्रोसेसिंग में. जब हम लोग बनाएंगे असली में स्प्रिंग प्रोजेक्ट्स, तब हम लोग ये करेंगे, पक्की तरह से करेंगे. तो ज़रा लिख लेता हूँ मैं इस चीज़ को. हम क्या करेंगे, हम एक स्प्रिंग प्रोजेक्ट बनाएंगे. सबसे पहले तो स्प्रिंग बूट्स में ही बनाएंगे. तो हम लोग एक स्प्रिंग प्रोजेक्ट बनाएंगे, और उसके बाद उसको हम लोग माइग्रेट करने की ट्राई करेंगे स्प्रिंग बूट में. माइग्रेट प्रोजेक्ट फ्रॉम स्प्रिंग टू स्प्रिंग बूट. ठीक है जी, ठीक है. तो आज के लिए इतना ही. मिलते हैं कल. बाय बाय, टाटा, सी यू, टेक केयर.